Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a super interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Wicked Dream Designs Nefarious, with definitely a much more interesting blade shape than what we are used to seeing on our premium knives. This knife is available for pre-order right now. I will link it right down in the description so that you guys can check it out. This pre-production sample was provided by Wicked Dream Design. So thank you very much. Please follow them on Instagram. The gentleman behind Wicked Dream Designs is Billy, who had, that's the whole name that I have. But he had a history in knife modding, and the story behind this goes that he woke up from a dream. And in that dream, this design came to him, and he sort of drew this out and made it into a realization. I think that was the general idea behind the company name, which I think is cool. I can't say that every single knife design that I've ever handled has an origin story like that, but I will say that this does look like it came from the dream world. I mean, there's a lot of really unique and cool elements here. There's also some elements that have clearly been inspired by some other companies, but we're going to talk all about it today. Thanks to Wicked Dream Designs for sending this in. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this absolutely wild knife. Overall length of the Nefarious is coming in at 8¼ inches, so definitely a full-size knife, as it should be. This and the loudness of this design, I'm so happy that it is what I consider to be full-size. I think that's very appropriate. It's very satisfying. Oh, blade length is coming in at slightly over 3½ inches. Cutting edge, yeah, it has to be, because the cutting edge is also about 3.65. So we're going to say blade length and cutting edge both about 3.65. You can measure it however you want if you pick it up. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and Others. So up against the 8010 and the 8020.5. It's a full-size knife. It's not as big as something like the 8010, definitely larger than something like the 8020.5. How about, talking too fast for myself today, up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. Very similar in overall size to the PM2 with way more cutting edge, obviously larger than something like the Para 3. And then finally, let's put it up against the Benchmade Group Tillionaire, in this case the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. Somebody asked me the other day if I ever get tired of referring to the Ritter Hogue as the Benchmade Group Tillionaire, in this case the Ritter Hogue, and the answer is no, I do not. But thank you for asking. How's the action on this knife? It only has one means of deployment, and I'm happy to say that that means of deployment works really well. That means of deployment, I've said that 3 times now, is a flipper tab. It's a bit small, it's a bit pokey, but not so much that it's really going to be a deal breaker for anybody, because truthfully, it's just adapting and altering your flipping method to more of a light switch than a push button. You can still do the push button. That's just where you're going to get maximum pokiness, right? But switching to the light switch method will result in a very satisfying deployment, because the detent strength is very, very good. Who is the OEM? If you want to get an idea for how this feels in terms of quality, it is Bestech. If you're familiar with Bestech, you'll know that they make a very good production knife. They are, manufacturing knives out of China, and they're one of the better OEMs, one of the much better OEMs that are coming out of China, and they have made countless premium products. So everything is as you would expect it to be, but access to the lock bar is also very, very good. You can see there's an additional cutout there. This lock bar is nested, which is really nice. Thank you. Thank you, Billy, for doing that. I don't know why I'm whispering, but yeah, I really like that. No double clutch or anything like that. The detent is great. I'll give you guys a look here at the detent. Click, wonderful. Fantastic deployment. No issue there. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. Not all that thick. Maybe slightly thicker than the Para 3, not much. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. This is not a knife that I found difficult to carry, but some people might consider it too large. Lengthwise, it's almost exactly the same as the PM2 closed up. It is obviously longer than the Para 3. Not quite as tall as either. Some areas are kind of approaching it. But none of these dimensions are really crazy. It's just the shape in the closed position, and especially the open position, that make it not, normal versus, I guess what's the most normal knife I have out here? The Ontario Rat right? It's just very, very unorthodox, right? But not difficult to carry because of it. Let's go ahead and weigh it. So what are we looking at for materials? We're looking at titanium. The lock bar itself is actually steel, which is completely fine because the whole idea with, the steel on steel contact is just to reduce the wear of the lock bar, right? A titanium surface is going to wear a little faster even when carbonized versus a steel surface. So whether it's a titanium lock bar with a steel lock bar insert, which I always find is really cool, but it's not absolutely necessary, right? That's one thing, or you can just do a nested steel liner, which is fine. That's what they've done here. So you have a steel lock bar nested into the titanium, which is great because that means you cannot put pressure on it while you're deploying it. I like that, like the surface contact there. So titanium, steel, titanium for the backspacer and pocket clip, and then we have MagnaCut for the blade. The HRC range, I don't know because it's not listed on the website. However, there are countless listings of Bestech knives utilizing MagnaCut all over the internet. And they tend to list them between 62 and 63, which is pretty acceptable. Generally speaking, the vast majority of the community prefers to see MagnaCut anywhere from 62 to 64, so 62 to 63 should not be an issue. Some people are going to bring up the sub $100 offered by Bestech on Knife Center that are in MagnaCut. If you didn't know that, yeah, Knife Center has sub $100 Bestech knives. I have no idea what the HRC range is of those. So if those end up being completely different, no idea. But the stuff that I'm typically seeing, the stuff that I review here that's from Bestech utilizing MagnaCut tends to be on the premium end in combination with titanium. And that stuff tends to be 62 to 63. So I'm going to guess that they didn't change their protocols for this knife. As you guys know, my review process with this stuff, being a design reviewer, does not involve me taking this out and using it for months at a time. That's not really my thing. I'm going to go off of what the company has listed in the past and what other more qualified members of the community have measured with proper testing equipment, people who are more qualified to do stuff like that. But that would be my best guess. Also, to come back to what I said earlier, Billy, I would definitely get your HRC range on the website so that people know exactly what range they can expect their MagnaCut to be in, because you also have coated versions of this knife, and typically coatings will reduce the entire range by 1 point. This is really important to people who are considering picking up your product. So anyways, I did not have an issue with this, carrying and using and cutting with it over the short time that I did. I think a lot of it has to do with the geometry. We have a super aggressive hollow grind, but we'll come back to that. So we have MagnaCut, titanium, 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 and steel full-size knife with a little bit of weight reduction there. Probably closer to 5, maybe over 5. I'm going to say 5.25. Nope, 4.7. 4.7 ounces, not bad at all. Balance is a bit back from the pivot, which we're also going to talk about there, but not bad. It honestly does not feel like a heavy knife. It feels like a typical full-size titanium frame lock. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel or the pinned comment. Whoops. Okay, pivot on this guy is coming in at T8, and then you have 2 body screws over here that are also T8, and that's it, because these 2 screws thread directly through and into the titanium on the other side. Usually what we see is these types of screws on the other side so that the show side doesn't show anything, and that would have been cool, but he was obviously trying to get the placement of this pocket clip and the shape to fit with the frame, so he was limited on room for where these screws could have gone. So I think I can understand. Either way, it doesn't really matter to me, because I think these screws blend well with the design anyway. It's not really that big of a deal. It's not an eyesore to me. But the benefit here is that you only have 2 screws in terms of body screws to take out if you want to get into the knife. So it's literally just the pivot, and then you have the 2 body screws, and then you have the hidden screw underneath for the pocket clip. So very, very simple disassembly, and T8. So that's really nice. As long as you have the right tools for the job, you should be good to go. Let's measure the blade stock thickness here real quick. I'm going to guess that that's 145 to 155. Not always right, but that's what it looks like to me. Yeah, 155,000. So you're looking at like a typical zero to like a big boy ZT knife, right? Let's move on into the meat and potatoes. I like this. You guys know, if you've watched my channel for a long period of time, I get really bored reviewing the same types of stuff over and over again. And as much as I enjoy a straightforward utilitarian knife, that's incredibly common. It's not difficult to find a straightforward utilitarian knife that doesn't cost very much money. I can throw a rock in any direction on the internet and find something like that. I've reviewed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of those types of knives. So when I get something that's a little more interesting and still made really, really well, I definitely get excited about it. This is, how do you describe this blade shape? The closest thing that I can think of is like a Spanish tip razor, but it has more of a tip to it. So we have a secondary, it's a recurve, I'm sorry, no. How would we say this properly for the blade shape police? I don't want to get arrested. God knows what their jails are like. But it's a hollow ground initial edge. Tanto secondary recurve? I guess? I don't know how we'd say this. The initial grind is extremely thin. I mean, it is aggressively thin. And it is straight, but it definitely does slice. I should have prepared a little piece of paper. I'm running out of paper. Slicing a piece of paper doesn't really prove anything, but man, it absolutely slices into that no problem. Now, will it be a nightmare to sharpen? Yes. Even if you're master wizard sharpening level 9,000, whatever, it's still going to suck to sharpen. The whole idea here was to create something unique, or more unique versus the average pocket knife for his design. This came out of a dream, right? So the goal obviously wasn't make the most user-friendly and utilitarian blade shape. No, the goal was I want to make something wacky and crazy and weird for people who are bored in today's oversaturated knife market, right? And love it or hate it, he did accomplish that. We definitely don't see this type of blade shape. The secondary grind is flat, and it is sharp, and it will definitely poke into things and cut things. I don't know what this blade in particular would be good at, or would be what's the word, like not prioritized, but optimized for, right? I have no idea, but it is cool. And every time you flick it out to use it, you'll have a smile on your face. I mean, it just is super different from everything else that I normally see. And it looks good. You have a bunch of different options, including, full tumbled tie with a satin blade. There's another more satiny option. There's a reverse tux option. There's a fully coated option. There's even an option for Zircotai hardware and in the pocket clip if you really want to. But yeah, lots of different options. Even the most basic one, which to my knowledge looks exactly like this, is still really cool. I just really like that. As far as ergonomics go, you would expect this to have the ergonomics of a pine cone, which is something I used to say a lot, joking around. I don't say that very much anymore. I'm going to bring that back. No, surprisingly, it's pretty comfortable. I mean, as far as something like this goes, it's very designy. He did a good job of making the handle match with the blade. It's not like, if you couldn't see the blade and you see the handle, and then you see the blade, you're like, oh yeah, right? Or you look at the blade. I hope the handle goes with it. Yep, right? I think it's obvious, and I don't think he hides it, that he drew inspiration from arcane design. In fact, if you look at his Instagram, he has owned, I think, multiple arcane design models. The triangular sort of space sci-fi looking pivot with the stepped milling here. I mean, that it looks very arcane without being exactly that. I think a lot of people would look at this and come to the same conclusion. It looks inspired by arcane, but not copied, which I think is perfectly fine. We see that all the time, right? But it does look cool, and your thumb position and index finger position, like the way that they complement each other, is really nice. As far as like hammer gripping it, yeah, you can feel like these areas in here. It's a little bit of an abrupt edge, but it's not a hard edge. It's not a sharp edge. There's nothing here that feels uncomfortable. Your positions, your hand positions are limited. You basically have this position locked in with your index finger here. You can choke back. It's not very comfortable. You're definitely feeling the pocket clip here. I don't know why you'd do that anyway. As far as your thumb positions, he's got a place here and he's got a place here. It does feel good though. It doesn't feel like a knife that I'm going to drop. It feels like exactly what it was meant to be, which is a designy knife that is very, very functional and made with premium materials and executed by a company who knows how to execute a knife, right? So yeah, I mean, it looks like exactly what you'd expect. Probably a slightly more comfortable than the average person would suspect, but it is comfortable. I mean, the lines do make sense, so I do like that. I do appreciate it. On the blade, he has the Wicked Dream Designs logo, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not in the way of anything. This is a pre-production sample. I think on the, obviously on the full production versions, he'll have Magna Cut somewhere. It doesn't actually say that here, right? But we know that it's going to be Magna Cut because, number one, of the note that he sent with it, and number two, on the website, it says that it's Magna Cut. So that's what you can expect. The pivot is captive, and it's in the shape of a triangle, which is really cool. I wish we saw a lot more of these designy captive pivot heads. Oftentimes, we see two, just circular pivots, and then you have a D-shaped pivot barrel, which is great. That's functionally what we want. Or you see a free spinning pivot where you have to adjust both sides. And that sucks. And it's hilarious to me that companies still do that, but they do. Billy decided that he did not want that, so he opted for a triangle, which actually follows this line up here, and it looks really good in combination with the rest of the knife and sort of follows the theme of the hard angles, right? There's nothing here that's soft visually. Everything is very, very angular, but not in a chaotic or sloppy way. It just looks good, right? I don't know that I have much to add to that. I do really like how we've stepped this and sort of elongated this, have had this line sort of follow the spine of the knife down here. It's cool. It doesn't need any additional texturing. I suppose it would have been cool to see these outlined or anodized right at the ledges, or maybe, each individual slab, for lack of a better word. It would have been cool to add little accents and things like that. It's kind of accomplished with the Zircotai kit that you can buy for it. But that's the only thing that I think would have made this slightly more interesting to some people. It's certainly not, a criticism, saying it has to have that in order to be interesting, because the knife is interesting enough on its own. But it would have been neat to see a little bit of, accent or here or there. Not really that big of a deal. Definitely not a deal breaker. And it's certainly a matter of opinion. What I said there is extremely subjective. So, I'm not saying that it has to. There's no lanyard hole. I don't care. I know most of you don't care. If you absolutely love lanyards and you can't live without them, this isn't a knife for you. For the other, 7.99999 billion people on the planet, or however many, right? You'll be fine. The pocket clip is really cool. It's completely sculpted and is absolutely matched to the overall look and theme of the knife. I like that a lot. A lot of times you get a really cool designing knife like this and you get a really lazy looking pocket clip. Functionally, it's fine. A lot of people will argue a stamped clip with a good bill is better, tipped down. There's a bajillion different opinions on pocket clips. This will do the job and has plenty of retention, and it looks cool as well. Your carry depth is a little low. I wouldn't call it shallow. You have a big spire sort of sticking up out of your pocket, but not an insane amount of knife. I don't really start to complain until we get like down here. I think that's a little ridiculous. That would be a shallow carry clip, and I don't know too many people who like that. I certainly don't, but this is fine for me. And there's plenty of retention. There's plenty of pinchiness without being too much. There's also a bill that rises underneath, so when you push it into your pocket, it'll clip over to rise to meet the pocket seam thickness generally of whatever it is that you're wearing. It's also riding on a smooth surface here, so easy in and out, generally speaking. There is no lefty mounting position. I mean, you could have done that, but you would have obviously had to have an additional couple of screw holes here at least, or one screw hole, and then a nested pocket so that the pocket clip does not move. Because I can guarantee you, without taking this thing apart, this is almost certainly nested, and if it's not nested, it's got two screws in it. Nobody in their right mind is going to set a pocket clip on top of the titanium frame and have one screw going into it, because then you have a windshield wiper pocket clip situation, and that's stupid. So this would have required two screw holes or a a pocket milled out here, which would have definitely taken away from the aesthetic. However, it's always nice when companies and designers can accommodate for left-handed people. This is not one of those cases, which is a bummer. Sorry, lefties. This will be carried in your right-hand pocket or incorrectly in your left-hand pocket. However you want to do it, it's your money, it's your leg, right? It's your fingers, whatever you want to do. The stop pin is actually located well, it's attached to the blade. You can see those two little bars sticking out, and they run on little channels carved out on either side of the titanium, which is nice. You have 2 points of contact versus 1. So nice lockup solidity, no blade play, and easy to center. I like that. Generally the case, right? Doesn't necessarily make the knife stronger, just like that. You have no blade play up, down, left, or right, no lock stick, no double clutch, no pivot lash, incredibly smooth and consistent in here, and a nice medium to medium heavy detent is how I would describe it. Real nice smooth action too. The blade isn't necessarily monstrous, doesn't have like, awkward weight distribution. I mean, it's 155 thousandths, it's pretty thick out to about here. Does get pretty aggressive right here. I mean, this is a pretty thin tip given that this has more of a crescent curvature to it, or a recurve. So obviously don't do anything aggressive with the tip. Yeah, I mean, what I'm saying is there's not a lot of tip weight or anything like that, but it does feel really good when you flip it. So, price tag, this is $339. It is Magna Cut, presumably heat treated properly. Magna Cut is not an inexpensive steel. Bestech does a really good job, even though, yes, it is manufactured in China. They do a really good job of manufacturing knives. It's also titanium. It's got a nested lock bar, titanium clip, titanium backspacer. But most importantly, these are definitely small batch products that are not mass produced and designed by Bestech themselves. So when we're comparing, if you're saying I can get titanium and Magna Cut from Bestech or any of these other companies for less in this design or this design, the difference is, number one, that's in-house Bestech, so they don't have to work out costs with working with somebody else and, creating room for that other person to make money alongside them. These are in much smaller quantities, right? Bestech does their own in-house design. They can pump out a gajillion of them, right? And they can make, profit on volume. So for some people, that's going to be way too much money. That's also understandable. But other people are going to understand and are just going to want to pick this up because it's a really, really cool, unique design. As far as, a utilitarian EDC, I think there's more here that's going to slow you down than speed you up. Obviously, I don't think you guys need me to tell you that. This blade shape will cut, it'll poke, it'll do what a good blade does at its base, but the real hang-up will come when it's time to sharpen it, for sure. It'll be very, very tricky to keep that bevel as perfect as it is from the factory, which, let me tell you, I mean, it's perfect, right? You're going to have a lot of goofiness and wonkiness, even if you're really, really good at sharpening over a long period of time. But, if you don't care about that, then knock yourself out because it's really, really cool. So if you're into the aesthetic, you're into the look, you're familiar with Bestech's manufacturing quality, and you're just wanting to know, does it feel good? Does it put a smile on your face? The answer is yes. I think he designed exactly what he set out to design, and the price isn't too far off from what I expected. I think I was hoping to see it at about $300 or maybe $289, so it's definitely a little bit up there, but this is also very clearly made for a specific group of people looking for this type of thing, or just something different, something a little bit weird, right? And for those people, yeah, go ahead, knock yourself out. For everybody else, there's a ton of things out there at this price point, so if you're just looking for a good tool, I mean, you've got a long journey, right? So that's kind of my thought process. As is the case with everything, it's going to be for some people and not everybody, but this is for a very specific group of people. It is a cool knife, and it's made very, very well, and I love the blade shape. I love seeing things that are different from what we normally see. That's going to be pretty much it. Like I said, pre-order links in the description. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex and on TikTok at @the_metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.